Why are you hitting yourself?
Stop it.
Why are you hitting yourself?
Stop it.
Why are you hitting yourself?
I'm not.
You're hitting yourself.
No, Michelle, I do not like your Nicol Bolas impression.
Tough.
In The Arbiter left chaos in his wake, the Sun Empire, the vampires, the merfolk, and a really angry Angrath, also some pirates, duke it out to gain possession of the world's most expensive floor tile, the Immortal Sun. Also, Vraska and Jace have a talking to the craziest cat-bearded man in the basement, and send him off to go count pebbles on Useless Island. Meanwhile, Soren Markov is still stuck in a rock.
I want to ask you this question.
Yes.
Are we being too hard on Azur here? Because even the title is against him. Even the title, talk about going into a story with prejudice. Because even the title of the story is saying he's a screw up, he screwed up, he's a bad... Like, I feel like we are not giving this cat a fair shake.
I don't think so.
How do you even... At one point in the story, Vraska proclaims to Azur, but those worlds were fine without your interference. He did this on hundreds of worlds. How does she know that? She says Ravnica was fine without your interference, and she does not know what Ravnica was like before he got there. So I think we're assuming a lot.
Well, so, okay, there's...
And I'm a believer in the Prime Directive and such.
So, okay, Vraska and I think a lot of folks are basically...
Show them your tattoo.
Off of... Okay, I have a tattoo.
Right, all right. So we
Boldly
believe
Go.
that we
So
believe
we do
in the
believe
Prime
in the
Directive
Prime
here
Directive.
on At the Multiverse.
Yes.
And so far be from, but I'm not so sure that Jace and Co need a Prime Directive. And go on.
So the thing is, Vraska and Jace are both looking at a sample size of 2, and they're pretty. But the thing is that the sample size is pretty incriminating. So Ixalan, for example. Azor mentions, he admits himself, he comes to this plane. There really wasn't anything to bother with on this plane. I mean, there were just a bunch of people in pseudo-Spain, and they weren't vampires yet. I mean, there were some people, and then the pirates didn't have to exist because they weren't fleeing from the vampires. The Sun Empire was just having fun with dinosaurs, and merfolk were just being merfolk. But then he comes and he creates this artifact, and granted, it was not to mess. The purpose of this artifact was not to mess with the dynamic of Ixalan, but I guess because he was just sitting there waiting for whoever to come and be imprisoned in Ixalan, he decides to just take it and sort of just shuffle it around.
In this case, whoever is Nicol Bolas, go on.
Yes, it is Nicol Bolas. So he was waiting for this big golden-headed dragon to show up, and turns out he doesn't. So he's just like, I've been stood up, I'm really bored, I'm gonna do what I do best in my head, and basically just start creating this like new system, this new dynamic.
No, wasn't he doing that before? Or, I think you got it backwards. Wasn't he? He was already on Ixalan.
He was on Ixalan.
When we're skipping to the next story here, but whatever. And Ugin came to him on Ixalan, right?
No. Ugin came to him on another plane.
Oh.
So they met up
That's
on
right.
another plane.
No, I'm wrong.
So, but in Ixalan, Azor didn't have to take the Immortal Sun and basically dish it, like play, I don't know what the game is even, but he's just sort of like takes these backsies with like all the other tribes. Well, he didn't have to do that. He could have just hung out with the Immortal Sun and his giant litter bed.
Okay.
And like not interfered with anyone. But because he did, he kicked off this entire series of events that has by far basically torn the entire plane apart. It's because of him that vampires exist. It's because of him that, like...
It didn't go well on Ixalan. All I'm saying is the sample size of 2. He did this on, like, 1,000 worlds.
And, well, we'll get to that in the next story, but can you imagine just some great, giant, flying, bearded cat man coming in and just saying, y'all don't know what you're doing, I'm going to impose all the rules in the name of fairness and justice.
He's a southerner? Y'all?
I'm
it's
a
southern cat.
Right.
Michelle's from Texas, for those who don't know.
Okay, I just got this image of, like, the Colonel from KFC, like, crossed with Azor, and that's just amazing, and I'm going to keep it in my head, and someone needs to make art of that. All right, anyway. So Azor comes, and he just basically enforces, in a very white-blue way, his idea of what he perceives to be right and wrong on all of these planes, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Ravnica already has hieromancy and law magic basically built into the intrinsic mana and like whatnot of a particular plane, so it suits him really well, and he creates this huge thing, this huge like system of the guilds, and he separates them, and they're all supposed to be done with, they're all supposed to be dealt with equally. But look at what happened in Dragon's Maze. That was kind of a crap show.
Well, that's largely because his guild pact was destroyed.
It was destroyed. How easily
kept the
was it
peace for
destroyed?
10,000 years.
But it wasn't. But it was really peace if it would anyway. So, if it really was perfect, then people wouldn't have had a problem with it. That's sort of my argument.
The people who had a problem with it were the people who wanted to seize complete power for themselves, which it was preventing.
But his backup was this implicit maze, and
yeah, well, it's a bad backup.
That was dumb. That was such a dumb backup. It's like having a backup dress after you like.
It's like having a backup drive for your computer that's a hand crank.
Or like a backup dress that's just made out of a paper bag. Like that's just not going to deal with anything for you. Like it's really fragile. Anyway. So
I'm not saying he's like.
He's not terrible. Like
I'm just saying, like he's not a bad. Yeah, right. Like they were really. I just feel they were really mean to him. They were just like they met him within 5 minutes of meeting, dude. They're like, you're terrible. You screwed up. You're gonna ban it. They were gonna kill him. First of all, they were ready to kill him.
Vraska was ready to kill him.
And Jace said, no, I'll kill him.
No, Vraska said no. Jace said that he deserved punishment.
Okay,
but he did not
that could be worse
death.
than killing. Punishment could be worse. Would you anyway, now we're getting that's a different
Semantics.
debate. Semantics. Anyway, they didn't even like listen to him. They were just like they heard the book flap version of what he's been doing, and they're ready to kill and or imprison for life, the two most extreme things.
Azor has left generations of people on Ixalan and Ravnica.
Ravnica's fine. They both like Ravnica. Jace loves Ravnica. Vraska loves Well, no, okay, not Vraska. Jace loves Ravnica. They've got coffee there and restaurants. Jace likes Ravnica a lot.
But Ravnica's not perfect, and if anyone would know that would be Jace.
Yeah, but Azur is, well, you want him... It's just, I feel they're being really hard on him. And like, there was other places we see later, they built statues to him. How do you know those places weren't better off? They obviously liked him enough to build a statue.
Or maybe they just didn't know any better.
Well, sure,
In
but
the words of Angrath, like, you don't realize you're trapped until... the first step to freedom is knowing that you're trapped. And Azur goes in... and he creates this enormous framework of rules and regulations that I know that he intends to.
You work in HR.
Yeah.
You work in HR, and you are now arguing against rules and regulations.
I'm not saying that rules and regulations are bad, but they need to be done with an understanding and with empathy for the people that you are building them for. And Azur didn't do that. If he did, then he would have realized that entrusting a crazy, powerful artifact to like some people in like pseudo Spain is like not the best thing for them.
Well, he probably didn't think of it as pseudo Spain.
Well, and that's the thing. Azur doesn't think through what his actions will do for other people.
Okay, yeah.
And that is what's causing pain, and that's why Vraska is so.
Doesn't make him a bad guy.
It doesn't make him a bad guy, and that's why he didn't deserve death. But his
deserves
inability.
Life in punish prison. He was trying. Like the Justice League is trying, and they screwed up. Should they deserve life in prison?
Justice League has not created generations, hundreds of years.
Give them time. Give them time.
Okay, but they don't have that time, and Azor has. He is an old walker.
Yes.
Keep that in
now,
mind.
that's another thing. Very important. He's an old walker. This is back when they had godlike powers, and so he would go to a world, and he's not just like, now it's a little bit more like you're a bit of a tourist with a little extra cash in your pocket, like to have some fun, and you can do more. It's like, I'm gonna go be a tourist, and I've got a little bit of more spending cash, and so I can do a bit more. That's their magic and stuff. But we're talking godlike powers. You go there. What's the point of having godlike powers if you don't abuse them?
And that's why Azor is stuck on a useless island.
You
now.
have godlike powers. You travel the multiverse. You wouldn't be like, all right, I think maybe I'm gonna call some shots here, see if I can make things better. I want to make things better. You, Michelle, have godlike powers. You go to a plane. Things are bad. You feel bad. You think things should be good. You have the godlike powers to begin trying to say, all right, knock that crap off. Do more of that stuff. That's good. Build a statue to me. And oh, you'd have one. Right? No, not even one. What about a symbol of you? Like maybe like a black pearl and a
Stop
crescent?
trying to lure me with
Oh,
absolute
yes, over
power.
time.
Who's the person
Wouldn't
who plays
you-
black?
You play
Yes,
black. I don't
but you're
play
the one
black.
who's talking more black.
I got a little black in me. I got a little bit of
Okay.
that ambition. But I'm much more the Iago character. Like, wouldn't you like that black pearl and a crescent moon
You're
that
Gilbert
represents
Godfrey?
from Shakespeare?
Okay.
We were talking about Shakespeare
You were
2
talking
minutes.
about Shakespeare, but when you say
You
Iago,
realize
I'm
they
just
took the
like,
name from Shakespeare, right?
I'm never gonna get the sand out of my feathers, and it's like I'm molting. Anyway,
That's a terrible Gilbert Gottfried.
I'm
I'm
really
sorry.
terrible at Gilbert Godfrey. I'm sorry, Gilbert Godfrey.
You gotta sound like some kind of a maniac with Gilbert Gottfried!
So, anyway, thank you for clarifying that you're not a parrot.
Right.
So,
I'm not a parrot.
you're not a parrot.
I'm not a parrot.
You're not a parrot.
I'm not a
either.
parrot.
Would you like a cracker? No.
Like a cracker, like a cracker.
So the thing about Azor, though, is he abused his power. He abused his power. He has caused
Yes. That's
millions
good.
of people across so many planes to suffer because of his inability and, like, I'm not even sure if it's inability, but unwillingness to think things through.
Oops.
That's a thing.
But there's so much worse out there. I mean, there were planeswalkers with those godlike powers that are like, I'm gonna make your world lunch.
Yeah, and that's why Nicol Bolas isn't going to be stuck on Useless
Right.
Island, although that would be hilarious. But, Raska said it best. You made hundreds of people over hundreds of years suffer as a result of your short-sightedness.
Okay.
And that's why Azor deserves to be banished.
Okay.
That's my argument.
You're right. I mean, I agree. I do. You're right. I like it. I really. One of the things I always like. It reminds me, in some ways, of a broad look at like the Greek gods, right? Because the Greek gods were flawed, and even the Greeks who believed in the Greek gods were like, but of course, if you've got demigod-like powers, you're probably going to be a jackass, and you're going to have ego and lust and greed, and you're going to make dumb choices and bestow bad tasks upon people, and
Clean out all these stables.
right, yeah. And I always rather liked that, and they always we're going back to Dominaria soon, and I don't know how much of that old Walker lore, but Azur is a bit of a throwback to that, and I always liked, and I think they did a great job of it with Azur, which is the madness of the gods. I always love the madness of the gods, which is that like what you were just describing in Azur was pitch perfect in the sense of the god of law is not thinking things through, and I love that, and I love that so much more, that because the opposite of that is boring. The god of law is thinking things through. Okay, and but I love the idea where they're just like, no, you're not even being rational about this, because you're too busy looking at. And I loved the detail that he had statues made to him, and he liked them and stuff, and I love, because I know he's a sphinx, but there's that little human touch in there, which is that, well, yeah, you can make me a statue. I bet I could convince you, Michelle, to have a black pearl and a crescent, or maybe like some kind of bejeweled owl, that represents you. Right, I see that.
No,
Yes.
this is my incredulity face.
Because you've
This is what I
given
look like.
so
I have
much.
incredulity.
That's your incredulity
That's
face.
my incredulity
It's a bad
face.
incredulity face. I thought I was tempting you. There's an incredulity face. There you go. See, I have brought that to you. Where's my statue?
Okay.
I have brought you the
There is
face
no
of
doubt that you
incredulity.
would have a statue of yourself.
I'd like a statue.
Of course you would like a statue.
Because that's my humility. But
Well, okay, the other thing that we should talk about,
Yes.
though, is, so Angrath gets dinosaur squish.
are you still gonna, like, are you in any way seeing how much these jumping perspectives are damaging the story at this point.
So it definitely was more jarring than I had anticipated, and that's the thing. So I'm gonna be non-diegetic here and step into the meta, where I'm just like, it's clear to me that the writers are like, oh god, we have a lot of stuff to get through, and I'm just gonna squish these together like, I don't know, a really awkward sandwich of avocado and I don't know what's really not good with avocado. Ham.
Ice cream.
Yeah, avocado and ice cream is actually pretty good. I'm just gonna put ham in.
You're insane. Go on.
So anyway, they squished these things together. They squished these two stories together, and it just felt very atonal. Just because the first one I felt was establishing a lot of breadth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're seeing all the factions come together, and duke it out on top of this giant tower that's made of gold that's not melting for some reason, and then the floor gives way underneath them because
Yeah.
Come to Azur's expensive floor tiles. We make the best floor tiles.
Right.
Also, they melt.
Drop on in.
Drop on in. You'll never want to leave, nor can you. So that felt like pretty awkward there. And then with the Azor, Vraska, Jace storyline, it was very deep, right? Because we really delved into not only a lot of character, like analysis and description, but also just in
Plot
going back
progression.
in time. Yeah,
Plot progression. The plot.
Well, giving proper context to the story.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, we did get plot progression in Huatli versus all the people. I just kind of see it that way.
Sure.
It's one of those WWE fights where it's just free for all basically. And
I don't watch WWE.
Oh, we're remembering Glow in the Netflix series. It's basically just like one person versus everyone, and it's a free for all that way, right? I mean, I had a couple of laughs. I thought it was funny that Angrath got squished by a dino, and the dino had a 30-second egg timer attached to it. And then later on, Angrath is like, just kind of busts in, like the Kool-Aid Man, into the space and just throws the head of the dinosaur at Huatli.
Yeah,
so
that's
that was
fair.
funny.
That's fair.
It was funny.
Like that. I thought Huatli went way too far with that. It's like you don't get to do that. Like without repercussion.
Exactly.
You don't get to just be like, oh, okay. It's like, sorry, I'm gonna pin you under. Like powerful being that does have a free right to come and go as he pleases. I get to be the decider. It isn't interesting now that I'm saying it tie into the idea of law and just she was basically saying, no, I'm gonna say you can't do that, and he's like, well, then there's gonna be a repercussion, which is your dino's dead. Because I'm not gonna. Yeah, and I think that's very fair. I like Angrath, and I sided with him, and it's just like no, I'm not just. I don't just go, oh, okay, I'll sit back here and trust that in 30 minutes I'll be set free or whatever. Like it's like no, f that.
I haven't seen my daughter in 14 years.
Yeah,
I'm going.
Right.
So I rather felt like it was very flavorful for Huatli as well. She is a character that is still trying to get a grip on how to act in all these new situations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was necessarily the right call.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're gonna squish the person who literally ripped a hole open in time and space to show you kill time, and you're gonna squish him with a giant dino. My question is, what dino did she actually squish him with?
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
I was gonna say Gregory.
Yes, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, so good story, and then we learn that at the end of it, the being he was gonna trap was Nicol Bolas, and that also happens to be Vraska's boss. And so we've got interesting connections abound. Good setup for the next story. What grade would you give it?
I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 mana symbols.
Me too.
Yeah.
We don't. I think we got a real problem is that we don't disagree enough.
I'm sorry. I can try to be more disagreeable.
I can only do so much interrupting you constantly. I can only do so much interrupting you constantly.
I can try flipping over the side table,
yeah.
I suppose.
But we can't seem to reach any, I really want the big disagreement episode where it's like, what are you, crazy? 4 stars? 1 star, this was terrible. No, this was awesome. There was too much in line. But maybe that I'll say this, and I give it, 4 stars is what I give it as well. 4 stars, 4 symbols, you get the idea. But this is what I'll say, is I think that's actually a testament to the writing, is I feel that if we were doing this 2 years ago, we would be having, because I know a lot of people in the more Vorthosy community, and I usually am in. We're not looking for the same things in the stories and stuff, and that's fine. Obviously, I mean, everybody's got their own thing, but that's actually, I think, speaking tantamount to what's going so well with the story here is that people such as myself who look for really weird different things, and people such as I think you're more aligned with like the regular, they like you, the Vorthosians, those folks
I just write
like
term papers on this.
they agree with that you're more in line with them, but that we are all able, and I'm looking at these stories, and we might like different things about them, but at the end we are all walking away saying, yeah, I dug it, I liked it. We had very similar reactions to it, and I don't think that would have been the case a couple of years ago. And I think a couple of years ago, well, there might have been some where we both were like, yes, this was a big favorite of mine. For the most part, a lot of them were very polarizing. A lot of them would have been like, I'm pulling my hair over how they rebooted, such and such in Origins, whereas you'd be like, no, I think that's a really clever reboot. That's what I remember hearing a lot on the forums, is it was a very hit or miss with those stories for each individual, and it divided a lot of player reaction. And here, again, it's anecdotal. You can't tell just from a blog post or in a Reddit thread and in someone's Twitter feed, but it feels to me like the overwhelming majority of people who do read the story now are kind of lining up in both enjoying it. I like Jace, you like Jace, people like Jace. They did a good job with Jace.
Everyone likes Vraska now.
Everyone likes Vraska.
Awesome.
So great stuff. On to the next one.
Yeah, let's do it.
What's the title of the next one? In Sabotage, we get to flash back pre-mending to see Ugin, that's right, Ugin and Azur hatch a plan against the Elder Dragon Nicol Bolas. But, as is so often the case, those plans are foiled by the Elder Dragon himself, who is one step ahead of even a mighty spirit dragon and Sphinx. Meanwhile, on Innistrad, Soren Markov is still stuck in a rock. I love all pre-mending flashbacks because I'm not a fan of the mending, and I don't like what it did, and I'm going to do a whole standalone lore analysis talking about how every interesting thing in the story today, not just this story, I mean just what's going on, everything interesting that's going on has to do with pre-mending abilities and powers and stuff. Avacyn is only possible pre-mending, and she's interesting. The Hell Vault is only possible with pre-mending stuff, and that's the pinnacle of the stuff. The Guild Pact itself, pre-mending. All of this stuff. The Immortal Sun. And that they did the mending, and I feel, because we've had several flashbacks now, pre-mending, post-mending, and it's interesting because I feel that they're able to do what they really wanted to do, which what they really didn't like about pre-mending stuff was too much of the omniscient, formless, godlike being, which is fine, because in the pre-mending flashback we get, Azur is still a Sphinx, Ugin and Bolas are still corporeal like dragons and such, and I think that they could very easily find a way to maybe start bringing in a bit more of those pre-mending powers and abilities while still saying, but Jace still looks like Jace, because they want that figure that you look at and you see Jace and you identify with him if you feel like a little emo poet, or you see Chandra and you identify with her. You know it's true. You see Chandra and you identify with her if you've got that fiery, burning anger and rage and passion. And you see Nissa and you identify with her if you're a hippie and all that stuff. You know it's true. And I think that they can maybe bring in a bit more where it's like, yes, but maybe Nissa can do a bit more with her earth magic than she could before, and we can get some of that pre-mending stuff. Anyway, I just loved the pre-mending flashback so much.
The pre-mending flashback was wonderful because it really hits home to one of the other themes that we are seeing in like real, I guess we saw this a bit in Amonkhet, but we are seeing it again in Ixalan, which is that the new walkers or post-mending walkers basically have to deal with the repercussions and the actions of the old walkers, right? So the old walkers basically went around the multiverse doing all sorts of shenanigans, and we see this with Azor, right? I mean, when Ugin just kind of blasts out of the sky and meets Azor in some unnamed plane, like Azor's just sitting there preening and being like, "This is mine, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
have done all the things, and behold my glory."
We used to collect worlds like certain people collect playing cards. Go on.
Or tiny cute animals that we
Yes.
put in balls.
Oh my.
Oh no. And
Actually,
make them
that is
fight
an interesting
against
card.
one
Yeah.
another. Yeah.
No, yeah.
So there is, and of course the conversation between the two of them that happens, and Azor is like, "I can totally do this. I have godlike powers. I can FaceTime through the blind eternities to Tarkir and talk to you,
Right.
you know, without having to do anything."
Pretty rad.
Yeah, pretty rad. Yeah,
It is, and that's why I want to go back to that, because it's rad,
But-
and it's a lot more rad than, and I you know, and I cast a spell to make a little illusion of a bunny to, like, you know, hop out, and it's like
It
like
is
we need a little bit more of what we can do.
It is interesting that, yeah, I mean, like, it's great to have really big, infinitesimal cosmic powers, but what the stories have been...
living spaces.
Living space. But the thing about having all that power is that you also have to be careful about how you use it, right? If a person has a ton
Right.
of wealth,
But that's the joy, is that of course you're not careful and all kinds of crap happens.
and then the new walkers have to come around and, like, try to clean up after it, is
Yeah,
basically what's
but
happening,
there you
right?
go.
Like, when the Gatewatch came to Amonkhet to figure it out, they're like, this is not great. And
Right.
and then they were just trying to salvage and help, you know, the Amonkhet, the people of Amonkhet, like, left behind after our devastation happened. And that's what's happening here with Ixalan as well. Like, people are coming here and they have to deal, like, Vraska is dealing with her crew and the aftermath of what Azor did. And when, you know, Nahiri and Ugin and Soren came together to deal with the whole Eldrazi threat, that didn't really happen too well. And then Jace and the rest of the Justice League had to kind of deal with the aftermath of the fact that Emrakul managed to just leave, you know, and that whole thing broke down. So old walkers, I think, are incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
They've lost a lot of that power, but like Azor, they haven't really thought through. Or maybe in Ugin's case, they just haven't had the ability to come in and try to fix what they did.
I don't know that I trust you. It's all the same thing. I mean, once you get to that, and we were joking about it earlier, but I do believe, many of the reasons I like this as a kind of story point or narrative, is I do believe that if you were imbued with phenomenal cosmic powers, is that it wouldn't take long before you would start to lose perspective.
Yep.
It's going to happen. It's kind of like they say, as your station in life goes up, like you start out working in the coffee room at the corporation and you're making minimum wage, and then you get promoted to, like, you know, the mail room, and then you get promoted to an assistant to the assistant manager, and 15 years later you're the manager, and you've got a house and a car. You're living a very different lifestyle than when you were making coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And they say it's very hard to go back to that lifestyle or that perspective, and suddenly you go out to dinner and dinner's $40, and like that was like you were going to Jack in the Box when you were making coffee, and now you're like, oh, $40 no problem, and it's your perspective changes. So imagine not being promoted from coffee room to management, but you're promoted to demigod, and the millennia fly by. The centuries roll on through, and suddenly that perspective gets lost. But I find that fast. You know, with absolute power comes absolute corruption. Well, what about with demi-power comes demi-corruption? And I like that, and I liked, not to repeat myself, that Azure was trying to do what he thought was right, but he also had an ego, and I like those things so much. I want to see a bit of that. I like, my biggest problem, and I've been very hard on the Gatewatch and their characters, and I know a lot of people don't like that about my critiques, but here's my problem when it comes down to with them, is when you look at them, they're all too perfect. They're all too Harry Potter. And this was the only criticism that you can make of Harry Potter, is he always got everything right, and the world was laid out to be him at the center of it, and that there was very few times where Harry Potter really screwed up and made mistakes, and the world was not set out where, like, turns out you're rich and you're the greatest boy and everyone knows you and loves you and stuff, and it's like, it's a little bit like that with the Gatewatch, not in terms of it turns out you're rich and everyone loves you, but it turns out that, like, you know, they're all a little too perfect, and their problems and their foibles are very small and stuff, and it's very hard to list out what's wrong with Gideon. It's very hard. There's things wrong with Gideon, and I mean within the world, not my criticism as a literary type jerk, literary jerk, but as like within the world, what's wrong with Gideon, and it's very minor stuff like getting into stuff with his faith or relationships with others or need to lead for this, but it's like he's a really good guy and he's really trying to do right, and he usually ends up doing right, and that's my problem with a lot of those Gatewatch characters. Is it's why I liked Liliana most of all before Vraska. Now, Liliana who? Vraska's
not technically part of the Justice League yet.
And I hope she never is. I want Jace to leave the Justice League to work under Vraska as they sail the multiverse. But that's another story. And that's, like, Urza was crazy.
He's
bonkers. Bat guano crazy. And he made so many mistakes after mistakes after mistakes, dumb mistakes, and it wasn't just that he was trying to do right. He was it was an ego trip half the time. It just so happened that satiating his ego was saving the multiverse, and there was so much wrong with him, and so much wrong with a lot of the old walkers too, and they were all mad, and I like that, because in some ways we are all mad, and we all have power. We have all great power in our lives as well, and I like thinking about how we use that power. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that there can't be characters like Gideon, but when I look at the Gatewatch unfold, I see a bit of too much of like, and they're all right, and that nobody ever, like, that's why, going back to old times, like, I thought the racist angle in Nyssa was interesting, that's a big failing. It's bad, and it's like, that's great, because now we've got something to work on, where it's like, you're not perfect, and not in a like, sometimes I work too hard sort of way, but like in a real genuine, like, Gideon's imperfections to me feel like sometimes I work too hard and such, and we're getting off the story here.
Yeah,
so what else here?
So I guess just to create counterpoint to what you were saying, so I actually really enjoy the fact that the focus of the narrative in magic lore has been very much on the personal, mm-hmm. and very much on the issues that each of these characters is trying to get through. And that's basically, I think, the narrative we're trying to create between old walkers versus new walkers. Old walkers, you very accurately set out, they're mad. They're mm-hmm. insane. They're just driven insane with all this power. Ugin, who seems to be the most grounded of them, still doesn't have any idea of how to scale down his ideas to the individual psyche and the individual level. These people can only see things in broad strokes. They don't understand the details. What's nice about, like, characters in the Gatewatch is that you actually have someone who can really relate to. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
relate a lot to Jace's insecurities about
Mm-hmm.
the fact that he is an incredibly vulnerable person. We can all relate to the fact that Vraska has been through a lot of trauma, and she's built herself up, like, tooth and nail to become who she is now. That's incredibly compelling. And that's the thing about old walkers. What they do is not incredibly compelling. It is horrifying. It is amazing. It is exciting. But these are things that are all in... Yes. But these are all things that are...
It's not for the weak-hearted.
It's not for the people who like details and things you can sink your teeth
Mm-hmm.
into. It's like reading a book in all caps. It gets really, really boring, quite frankly, after a long time. But I think that both are necessary in order to create a great narrative in this situation.
And now we're getting, and maybe I'm realizing this as you were saying and describing this, and as I thought just now hit me, which is, oh my God, those sneaky, clever bastards at WotC, have they solved a lot of the problem, not just in the incredible writing, but also in, are they going to give us both? Like we've got this story that we're ending on today. Starts with a pre-mending flashback and then has those pre-mending, now post-mending characters still. We've got the godlike Sphinx, the godlike Spirit Dragon, the godlike Elder Dragon, and we've also got very mortal Jace and Vraska and even more mortal, folks below them. Are they gonna just say, because they said magic is just the gods, and then they said, nope, we've reinvented it. Magic is about our very, just a wizard traveling around the plains, very mortal characters. And then when there were plenty of players like myself saying, hey, I miss the old walkers and I really liked that, their response was always, too bad, magic's not about that anymore. And are they actually doing, please, oh please, no, sure, we can have both. Why not both? We can have Azur and Jace and Gideon and Ugin. And if you happen to really like Gideon and Jace and their deals and such, you can enjoy the story, and I can enjoy Nicol Bolas slapping an elf in the face with his own hand, which you know you loved.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I did. So my question, now that you've pointed that out, if it's okay, I'm going to move on to the story. So what do you make of Nicol Bolas's, I guess, new strain of petty cruelty?
It's a little out of character.
Okay.
I think it's okay. I allowed it.
Because it was hilarious.
Right. I liked it, and I believe that it's because that is going to be, at the end of the day, it got a laugh, and it was enjoyable. So if it was a little out of character, it's okay, because as long as it doesn't become a trend, everyone talked about it, everyone enjoyed it, everyone smiled, and that's okay. It's okay to do stuff like that. It's okay for, Jace to crack a joke. It's okay for Vraska to call Jace an asshole. It doesn't have to be in every story. Mm-hmm. It's okay to have that engagement with the audience. Every now and then, Bolas is going to do that. I do believe that the character is much more enjoyed by people as not someone who would do that, as someone who is the much more detached, genius elder dragon. There's a story from not too many years ago where Bolas's touch creates insanity, and he just kind of very casually just drives someone who gave him a bad answer insane, and it's just like, but it's not as a joke or anything, it's just the cruelty of how he is, and it will snuff out a person's very being without afterthought. It's showing a little bit of his own ego, perhaps. He's certainly got it. I like that. I thought in the Amonkhet, which I wasn't a fan of the storyline there, but I did think the one line where he roared and he thought to himself, he didn't have to roar, but it felt good. And it's like that he was giving into his more carnal dragon biology and let out a roar and such. And it's like, it's okay if you don't make a habit of it. I was fine with it. I enjoyed that scene. It created a talking point. It's okay to do that stuff. I think one of the biggest problems Wizards has as a whole is taking itself too seriously. And that it's okay to have a little joke every now and then, and Unstable proved that.
That's very true.
We can let loose, let our hair down.
I mean, we already have. But I actually found it really hilarious, but also a little worrying. I guess I'm maybe one of those people who likes to see Nicol Bolas over there as this incredibly omniscient, he appears on Omniscience, for crying out loud,
yes.
in the Invocation. Like, incredibly powerful elder dragon who has managed through all odds to amass more power than nearly any other planeswalker in the multiverse.
Right.
In a bid to just get an idea of, like, what he was able to do before the Mending.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really difficult for me to reconcile that kind of careful strategy, that kind of forethought, the sort of manipulation that you see in, like, in previous storylines. And even with this storyline, like, he's got his army, he's got the portal, he's got the floor tile. Like, this is a very intricate thing that involves a lot of moving pieces. And to see him as the kind of person who not only can do that, but also rip the arm off of an elf and, like, smack him around like
sure.
that with it, that is a little bit...
It's pushing it. It is. And the other thing I want to add on to what you've just said is that one of the things with Nicol Bolas is he was always a villain that was not looking to be a villain so much as just looking for his own personal gain, and if you happened to be in that path. But he was not the megalord of the multiverse. He was just like, I'm going to read every book there is. And if you just happen to own a library, that's where you got in trouble. And a lot of times, actually, going back into some of the old story, he was definitely a force to be reckoned with, but he was not seeking out to do just evil for the sake of evil. He didn't delight in just, what an evil plan I have concocted. He's a calculated self-power. And that calculated self-power is almost like a force of nature, where it's going to come to your world maybe and do something. And it's not about any type of taking delight sort of thing in it. And I do feel that pushing him, he was always in the background, right? Over there. You said it a second ago. He's over there. And now he's very much in the foreground. And I'm really hoping they don't trip and make the mistake of, and he's doing this ultimate evil plan that doesn't really benefit him in terms of the character that's been established all these decades of the game and its story. And like the way he was in Alara is he was very much in that background. He had his little operatives on each shard. He was just, the shard was going to come together. He's going to drink it up and to get his old godlike powers, and that's it. It wasn't for a nefarious plan. It wasn't for anything more than just him. And I do agree that it is a little worrisome. Sometimes too much of a good thing is not good. And we've got to be careful of that with Bolas.
Yeah.
I don't want him to turn it. He really is everyone's favorite villain. Let's not get bellyaches from too much ice cream.
Yes, I mean, we've already had the instance where he was like, I would love to clap, but I can't because talons. And then, like, I'm just going to drop a bunch of sailing knowledge because, well, actually, that's actually way
that was more interesting. That's much more him. I got bored. I wanted to read about sailing. That's exactly Nicol Bolas.
Nicol Bolas
His
is
original
probably,
card is him reading a book. It is?
He's also probably an amazing potter in his spare time.
Right.
Giant dragons.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree with you about that. And I mean, maybe this is that they're saying, listen, we're headed to Dominaria. Let's pull out all the stuff. We've always used Bolas sparingly. Dominaria, 25 years. Let's use Bolas.
So here's another thing too that I kind of want to point out with the story Sabotage before we head into the meaty bit.
Okay.
How arrogant are the old walkers?
Oh, very. All of them.
Oh my gosh. Like, so Bolas was basically traipsing from plane to plane, finding out what Azor was saying the whole time, because Azor was essentially just like the most loose-lipped Sphinx ever, and he just sort of like talked casually about, oh, I'm going to bring down this thing. He's like, you know this thing? Mm-hmm. I'm working on this amazing floor tile, and it's going to like totally track this Bolas person. Yeah. And
I said a minute ago, I liked that they gave Azur an ego.
Yeah, he like writes it on his statue. Like, who does that? Apparently Azor. Right. But I mean, the thing too is just that
he's making quite the Azor of himself. No. All right.
So, yeah, it was just. I was just kind of like, wow, Ugin, really? You couldn't find anyone better? And I think that was also just the case. I don't think Ugin could have found anyone better. I think Azor was also just kind of
Azor had the power. He just was, his mind was, he didn't have the mental stability, ironically.
I think he was also just really desperate for a friend.
Yeah.
He was just
they said that line in there where Ugin's like, I used that word friend, and it's like, yeah, he's lonely. And to me, that's what's making me smile, because I love those little, I love failings, because, those little flaws, those little ways in which, there you go.
I think Azor was just so excited to be friends with an old walker. I mean, if you've got a ton of people running around with a lot of power, I don't think that your ability to trust them would necessarily come easily. And so I think the fact that Azor had just been roaming the multiverse, like laying down laws like no one's business, finding a plane where, he could talk to this awesome spirit dragon, and they could be friends and work on a project together. I mean, I felt that was really cute, but also sad.
So what's the meaty bit?
The meaty bit is with Jason Vraska.
Oh, yes. So, go ahead.
So, Jason Vraska...
See how I didn't interrupt you there?
Oh, thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, so Jason...
I totally had something to say.
Oh, come on, Brian! Stop it! So, Brian... anyway.
You wait!
Brian,
what was that Freudian slip?
Sorry! I was just, like, thinking about...
Were you about to say Jason? You said Brian?
Yes.
My God, Vraska, go on.
So, anyway, Jace and Vraska, they basically dish with one another about Bolas, and they basically get the 101 on what's going on. And as it turns out, Jace was able to get an idea of what Bolas's endgame was, which is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And then Vraska is really incensed by the fact that he's going to come to Ravnica and just blow up the plane, essentially, and that's Vraska's home. And it's also Jace's home. I mean, they both feel very strongly about the plane. We all do, really. It's an awesome place. But Vraska has this crazy idea because she wants to be able to inflict as much damage as possible in this situation. So she asks Jace to remove her memories of Jace.
Mm-hmm.
and he's horrified at first. And then
But then we won't be friends.
But then they promised to have a date on Teen Street, and it's like the most adorable freaking thing in the multiverse. So, I wanted to get like an idea of how you think they handled it, because I know that when the art book came out, we talked about this last time. We know that Vraska's memories are being erased. We saw the storyline card that had that art.
And and we saw it coming.
Yeah, we saw it coming.
I mean, like, going all the way back to the last set, just regular Ixalan. You know, I mean, we ended that final storyline episode with me saying I was going to riot if they did this, and here they are doing it. I give it an A+. Nice. I give it an A+. Fantastic. They did it right. But they did it right because my fear wasn't so much that they do it, but that they do it as a reset button, where it would just be like, okay, but we can't have that go on, you know, episode to episode, story to story, so we're going to undo it as the plot demands, and then, you know, it can be years later where we might get a line where Jace is like, Jace remembered a time when he and Vraska were close as you know,
they were thick
friends
as thieves.
and thick as thieves, and now here she was trying to kill him. How regrettable. And that's what I couldn't handle. This, because the fact that her getting her memories back are built into the plan, I'm okay with. As long as they don't, storyline people, screw with me and say then something's going to go wrong and she won't get him back or it won't work right. As long as she gets him back and they're friends forever, I'm okay with this.
We've been promised a date scene.
We've been promised a date, and hopefully this one Gideon won't interrupt. God damn it.
Jace, I need you to come with me now. No,
It's what? What is it? It's your children, Jace.
It's your children.
It's your
Jace.
children.
It's your children.
We've got to go back to Dominaria. To Ravnica, right? Yeah.
Anyway, so.
Yeah.
I thought it was really well done too. I thought it was also really heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was, but in the right way too. And I liked also there was a lot of tenderness in terms of like what he had at, you know, like the connection and the touch and all of that. It was very, very well done. It was just it's excellent. And I give this story 5 all mana colors. This was fantastic. I had no problem with anything in this story. Riveting from start to finish. You had a problem?
So, not so much a problem. It was just. Actually, I don't really have a problem. I think the only nitpick I had was like Bola smacking an elf around.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I liked it though, but I see what you're saying, and it's the danger. I'm gonna put this in Star Trek terms for you. It's the danger of too much Borg, right? Borg were in like 3 freaking episodes for 6 years, and that's it. They were in 3 episodes. But then it's like, let's use them again in this 2-parter with Data and Lore. Let's use them again in this one, then in Voyager every other week. And then it turns into what was once a powerful, terrifying, just haunting villain turns into being completely just whatever. They show up and they're not a threat and we're not scared. We're going to willfully assimilate ourselves and it's not a problem and all this crap that they did on Voyager. And but that's the problem that we're running with. It was really cool when we had that Borg episode with Hugh and he came back. And it was really cool that we got more Bolas, but then it kept happening. And then we suddenly had, you know, the Borg are doing that thing with Lore, and that's the equivalent of this getting slapped with the face. I see what you're saying. I really do see what you're saying. I hope they rein it back in. And you said his plan was to blow up Ravnica? Is that confirmed?
No, it's not.
No, we don't know what he's doing
Ravnica.
there.
We don't know quite what he's doing.
It better, and that's the other thing. It better not be to blow it up again. We just had that in Amonkhet. It should be something a little more clever.
Well, the idea that Vraska and Jace thought was to basically use the Immortal Sun to trap all of the to summon all of the planeswalkers to Ravnica, trap them there, and then kill them with the army of blue-covered zombies that come through the portal to and that's basically
Cool.
yeah. So it was just very much I really liked that beginning. I really liked having the dragons tussle out. Finally having that come through to present day with Vraska and Jace. I thought it was executed really, really beautifully, except for that one little hiccup. So I'm gonna give it 4.75.
Wow, man, people used to say I was a hard ass when I was actively teaching.
Give it a 4.75.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, hard ass. Like, damn, just because of one little thing, it's not 5 mana colors. All right.
But the thing is that it damages.
I see it. You really think that? You know what? It's very brave of you because it's a popular scene.
Yes.
It's fun and enjoyable, and you are standing up for what's right, which is that despite all those things, it's damaging the character. It's damaging the long-term application of the character, and so I commend you for that. I still give this story 5 mana symbols. However, my rating of your rating is also 5 mana symbols. I give your rating a 5 mana symbol rating.
I mean, I think I'm not being really nitpicky and harsh here. That's for sure.
But that's what we do at the Multiverse.
At the Multiverse.
So, are you super excited? Are you super hyped
I guess I am.
for Return to Ravnica?
God.
Because that's all set up,
Yes.
and that's
Yes.
coming up as the next set. I mean,
Yes.
so right after Rivals of Ixalan, we're returning to Return to Ravnica, and they did such a great job getting me so hyped for our Return to Ravnica. It's coming up right after Rivals of Ixalan. I can't wait to play it, to talk about. It's all I can think about now.
I'm sorry, there's some bad news.
What's that?
We're going to Dominaria.
Dominaria.
You're gonna-
Oh,
yes.
that's Nicol Bolas's ultimate plan is Dominaria?
No, we're going to Dominaria next.
But is Nicol Bolas's ultimate plan on Dominaria?
No, it's on Ravnica.
Why do I care about Dominaria?
I thought you loved Dominaria.
I can only think about Ravnica now. And okay, how long do I have to wait until Return to Ravnica? Probably
Just a few months.
a few months.
A few months.
It's the fall set,
It's a fall set, isn't it?
so it's like 6 months.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm not even gonna care by then.
You'll be fine. You'll care about it.
Where can people find you if they'd like more lore from our wonderful librarian curator Michelle? Where can they find you?
So you can find me online at Twitter. My handle is in the doobly-doo down here. And you can also find me on Card Kingdom, where I'm writing articles now. Yay. I'm also on a podcast called The Lorgwaves. We can be found basically on Twitter as well. We post episodes all the time. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, we'll see you on Ravnica. Oh, no, wait, it's Dominaria.
I'm sorry.
And this video is brought to you by my and many other people's local game store, Card Kingdom, a brick-and-mortar pillar of this community, as well as the Patreon support of viewers such as you. These are the people that keep Tolarian Community College going and growing strong. So thank you.